The following is a conversation with Ben Tallini. Ben is the owner of Haven Jiu Jitsu in Baldwinsville, New York. He is also the president of the Haven Initiative, a program that teaches at-risk youth Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which helps improve their health, confidence, and problem-solving ability. They use police officers trained in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu to assist in coaching the children to improve community relations, provide role models to the youth, and enhance relationships between the youth and the officers. Ben is a black belt in Jiu Jitsu and has been training in the combat arts since 2005. He is an entrepreneur, a hell of an athlete, and a human being that is striving to make this world a better place through the gentle art of Jiu Jitsu. You are listening to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. If you are enjoying this content, please support our sponsors in the description. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. Folks, listen up. I want to take a brief moment and thank our podcast show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Native Path Supplements, and Redmond Life. Lombardi Chiropractic has been my personal chiropractor for 10 years and has kept my body strong and healthy. Native Path Supplements are used by numerous co-movement clients and our coaching team here at the facility. I highly recommend that you try their chocolate collagen peptides. I was made aware of Redmond Life by one of our trainers here at the facility. He recommended I try Relight electrolyte powder. This supplement has dramatically improved my afternoon energy levels and overall hydration. I'd like to thank these three companies for providing outstanding service and products that make our society healthier and more resilient. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's C-O-M-O 15, at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com or redmond.life and receive 15% off all your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy. Ben, welcome to the Co-Movement Gym podcast. How you doing, buddy?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Josh.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to talk. You've got a lot of really inspiring things going on. We both are into jiu-jitsu, and I just wanted to spread the word on some really cool things you're doing, and you're inspiring to me and many others. So here we go. So jiu-jitsu, what is jiu-jitsu? I know there's a lot of people that know what it is, but there's a lot of people that don't. So can you give us a 101 explanation on what that sport is?
Yeah, usually the easiest way, because people automatically equate every martial art to karate. The easiest way to kind of explain jiu-jitsu, it's essentially wrestling. But instead of worrying about pinning people, we can submit people, whether it's arm bars, chokes, etc. So usually I'd be like, if anybody has seen the UFC, anything that happens on the ground or happens on the feet to get it to the ground, that is typically jiu-jitsu. And that's usually the easiest way to explain it to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that's pretty good. It's nice. It's a way of controlling people and putting them to sleep or breaking them if you need to. But I guess the big thing is control, right, Ben?
Control, yes, 100%. The fact that you can control somebody without having to resort to choking or breaking or concussions in a stand-up art is what kind of sets jiu-jitsu above and beyond the rest of martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I'm curious. I'm 40 now. How old are you, Ben?
37.
Okay. So what are some reasons why someone would walk through the doors and join a jiu-jitsu gym if they didn't plan on competing or being a high-level athlete? I'm a gym owner, obviously, and so are you. But, jiu-jitsu is really hard.
Yes.
Right. And, I go 2 to 3 days a week. It's hard for me to recover. Right. Like it's tough, but I do believe it is a sport and a hobby that most people can partake in at some level.
100%.
Why? Yeah. Why would, a 40-year-old or 45-year-old male or female join a jiu-jitsu gym?
So a bunch of different reasons. One of them sometimes is a midlife crisis at that age. But one of the other things too is like sometimes people get bored with like your standard workouts and they just are looking for something different. or something different where they get to meet people and still get in shape and they don't have to think about it. Yes, jiu-jitsu is extremely hard on the body, but if you're upfront with people and you set a good tone at the gym with like, hey, if you're rolling with one of the older guys, you shouldn't be trying to smash them. Try to meet people's level when you're rolling with them and not beat them based off like athletic talent. I think it really sets up an atmosphere where everybody, regardless of age, can really kind of get after it, get all the benefits of learning like self-defense and getting in shape, without having like going through the monotony of like, oh, how many sets am I doing or what are we doing? Like, because that is great for some people, and then some people get bored and want to try some other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in today's chaotic world, just having the ability to defend yourself, I think, is
Yes,
super important, right?
100%, 100%.
Have you seen examples of that in your gym or in your training through the years where people have, used jujitsu on the street as a form of self-defense?
So yeah, 100%. So we're working pretty close with the Syracuse Police Department in helping bring jiu-jitsu to their department so they can basically have a better trained department to deal with anything that goes sideways. So actually, as of last week, we had an officer that somebody attempted to stab while they were working out on the job. And so it was just a very interesting conversation because the officer was like, the training had kicked in that we've been working on. Now we do weapon retention, but we don't typically show them how to disarm. I kind of think a lot of the times most knife defense is kind of BS, but this person ended up throwing a Kimura on the suspects, ended up basically taking the gun or the knife away from them, getting to mount, and held that person down until backup arrived, which they were blown away because basically they were like, hey, I went into just auto jiu-jitsu mode at that point and wasn't nervous or anything like that. So it was really awesome to hear that as of last week. I mean, there's plenty of other stories with, officers getting a takedown, controlling the person, not having to resorting to using taser, guns, and other things. And then for your average member, I do think jiu-jitsu kind of gives that confidence where that in and itself can kind of deter the reasons to get into a fight or have to use self-defense. I think confidence is huge.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, and I'm interested by that whole concept of almost like you put off an energy, right?
Yep.
Like, and it's not that, you've got all the tattoos and the double cauliflower ear, right? Like nothing like that. I just mean like, I don't know, it's almost like you have nothing to prove versus in a lot of those situations, you've got two individuals, stroking their ego
Yep.
and that have really never tested themselves. Meanwhile, someone trained is testing themselves all the time and being humbled, right? And yeah, I can see that. The energy and the confidence that comes off that person is sort of like, we don't want to go here, but if you really want to,
Right.
we can add another round to my day.
Yeah, I think so. At the end of the day, we're all just animals, and I think some of that lizard brain can still pick up on some of that stuff. Like, oh, that person's a little too confident in this situation.
Yep.
Maybe I shouldn't mess with them.
Yep. Did you see that video on YouTube with the Ohio State football
Yeah.
player? Dude, I've watched that like 10 times, man. That kid's like 140 pounds, and the football player is like 200. They're in the bathroom, and the buddy the MMA guy looks over at his buddy, gives him a quick wink, and then he goes to work.
Yeah. No, that part is pretty hilarious, and they just go. So
Yeah, and you know what the camera didn't pick up before, of course, is the guy got hit, and I think he had a bloody nose, and he was really being patient with this asshole.
yeah,
And then you just started seeing bodies fly. And the funny thing is this kid had multiple years MMA experience. I think he had fought.
yeah.
Like this was just another walk in the park, except it was in a bathroom.
Right.
And very, very interesting. But so with jujitsu, right, the person walks through the door, they're getting some confidence, they're feeling good, they're learning the basics. What are the main reasons people quit jujitsu?
So a lot of different reasons. I would say the absolute biggest reason is the grind. So like anything when you start off, skill acquisition starts off extremely fast and then diminishing returns starts to set in. Regardless of what you're doing, that's how everything works. So I think usually for that first like 6 months to a year and a half, depending on how much they're coming in, every class is like brand new. It's game changing to everything that they're doing. And then that starts to slow down. And you have to mentally like want to improve then at jiu-jitsu, because it does become hard. It becomes months of like maybe adding or polishing one thing in your game. You start to accumulate injuries, or you're getting older, and as you're getting skill acquisition, the age is kind of taking some of that down, and it kind of feels like you're at a steady state the whole time, but you might not be. So I think in all seriousness, the grind is what kind of kills most people. And then you've got your occasional, like, you know, family or money and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's the grind.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. You know, you have the law of diminishing returns, right? So like the first 6 months, you are tremendously different than when you had started, right? And then year 2, about that blue belt, you know, again, another pretty good leap. You know, I'm in year 4.5 of very consistent training, and yeah, it tapers for sure.
Yep.
You know, I'm still a blue belt grinding. You know, you have a handful of new 21-year-olds that come in that, you know, were collegiate athletes that have no grappling experience, but they're freak athletes.
Yep.
And, you know, you hold them off, you don't get subbed, you do what you need to, but it's definitely not easy, right?
Yep.
And then you start questioning things like, well, I suck. And, you know, my neck is hurting me. And yeah, so you explained it perfectly. But yeah, it is. It's just, but you know what? You said this also. It's like that in anything.
Yeah.
Right? Swimming, running, lifting. And you know, if you're a generalist and want to be okay at a bunch of things, that's really cool too, right? You know, but the farther you go along any curve, really past year 2 or 3,
Yep.
it slows down, and it's a lot of like what you said, the grind, you know?
And that seems to be, I don't know if it's culture oriented, but I would say that's almost across the board in everything. At least in America, people have like a 2 to 3 year attention span for things, and then they find something new.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't, you know, I guess it depends on the goals,
100%.
right? Because like, I would say the vast majority of people are not looking to become a master in anything.
Yep.
Right. And so then if the goal is health, happiness, and longevity, then, you know, variety creates stimulation.
100%.
And so, you know, that's okay too. I don't find a fault. We have people here at the gym, you know, they're here a year or 2, maybe 3, and then they move on. And like, I don't take that personally where I'm like, oh, you know, there's all these things that you didn't accomplish. I'm like, no, you know, they found something else.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So what tips do you have for the 40 and over crowd that still want to be rolling at 55?
Yeah. So one of the biggest ones is you have to realize age is a factor, which is a real difficult pill for people to swallow. And in your 20s and 30s, so at the gym, at our gym, we have a really big rule that there is no winning in training. There's only winning in competition, right? So as long as you can really, and it's difficult to do, but really embrace that and not worry about, hey, I'm 40 now and I can't submit the new collegiate athlete that's coming in. And you're just out there having fun, learning the skills and saving the winning for competition, where at least the playing field can be even with age and rank. I think that's important, because I tell you, 40, 50 going with a 20-year-old almost sometimes doesn't matter. Like, they're going to put a pace on you. So like I said, it's a lot of going to be just having the right gym atmosphere. So as long as people understand you roll to the ability, like you shouldn't have a 250-pound person trying as hard as they can against a woman, right? Now, if it's a purple belt competitive woman, she's probably still going to do all right, but that still shouldn't exist in the gym, in my opinion. Like, it should be people trying to take care of each other out there. So
yeah, that's it's a hard community to build that, right?
100%.
New bodies, combat sport, egos, gosh, I could go on and on.
Yep.
That's tough. But again, I think the leader can set that tone. You have some gym enforcers, right? That can also do their thing. Right.
A couple.
Um,
So in all seriousness, Josh, I'm not a huge fan of the gym enforcer thing too. It's very, very rare, at
mhm.
least now at the gym, because we've been almost open 2 years, that there's somebody like you have to beat on to get the point across. In fact,
Okay.
usually when somebody comes in and they're going too ham, we just bring
Yep.
them we immediately stop it, bring them to the side, and we're like, hey, like that's not a pace that we're going in here. Like if you want to compete, we have comp classes or we're going to do that. And
Oh, okay.
I think it works much, much better. So we've had some other people join from other places who kind of haven't gotten there. Like, I don't understand that guy. Just the coach will put me with him and he just beats the snot out of me. And this somebody who's a little bit of a spaz. And I see
Yep.
when they're rolling, I'm like, oh no, this is why that's been happening to you. I think you can't always assume that people understand what they're doing and
Mhm.
that they learn without being specifically told it. Like we can't read people's minds. I think it's always just easiest to go and verbally say something. And then if they
Yep.
still don't change, I have no problem kicking somebody out of the gym if it hurts the gym atmosphere. Because I think that's better overall for everybody. So yeah,
Mhm.
less gym enforcers. Because if you have to use a gym enforcer, that person shouldn't be at your gym anyways, if they don't learn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And like you said, you don't really know where that person's coming from anyways, right?
mhm.
So like, it's a survival instinct to not
Yes.
want to get the shit kicked out of
Yeah.
you. So then everyone's like, "Oh, the white belts are so spazzy," and this. It's like, well, okay, like they're getting choked and
Right.
slammed, and like, I don't know many people that would just flop around like a fish.
Right.
And from a business standpoint, if the goal is to retain clients, which
Yeah.
it should be,
Yep.
then having a gym enforcer come around and just kick the fuck out of people, like, probably not good for retention,
No,
right?
no, not very.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good, Ben. I like that. All right, so we got some background out on jiu-jitsu, 15 minutes in. I wanted to lay some framework here. So now let's
Yep.
dive into some more details. The Haven Initiative.
hmm
This is something cool. I've read up about it. We chatted a little bit on email, but for the listeners, what is it and what is the goal?
So the Haven Initiative is basically we take kids who might be having difficulty financially or difficulty at home, underprivileged kids, and we bring them with officers who are training jujitsu. So especially in some of the impoverished areas, like we're specifically working in Syracuse right now, we're trying to bridge the gap that has only grown now, especially over the last probably 6 or 7 years, of people in the city looking as police at the end as the enemy, because then it just makes everything chaotic. Because at the end of the day, police are there, they're trying to help people out, they're trying to prevent crime. But if the people who are having the crimes committed on them don't trust the police either, it creates a terrible dynamic. And it's if talking about diminishing returns again, if we're starting with older, like if we're trying to help adults bridge that gap, it takes way more effort and time to change their opinion than if we start with kids. If you can change it when they're young and instill that idea like, oh no, those police officers are my friends. I've been working with them training jujitsu. I have that trust that's built, because you have to trust somebody to put a choke on and let it off when you tap. So if you can build that kind of trust, we're really hoping that it'll pay dividends in the community later on.
Wow. How many kids are involved in this right now?
So we're right now working with the Syracuse PAL Association, and they kind of put it out there. So we will be having our third Haven initiative at the end of this month, and I think we've seen a total of around 60-ish kids, which has been fantastic. And we're hoping, because we're just in the infancy of it, that we can really start to grow it, start going to schools maybe and doing like once a month at a different school locally, and really start to grow the community as much as we can.
Wow. And this is volunteer on your, yeah, geez,
100%.
man, that's super special. And yeah, creating that relationship with the officers and having them seen in a different light,
Yes.
that's huge.
Yeah,
That's big. And
optics is
yeah,
everything.
your market is unlimited, right?
Yes.
Like Syracuse alone. you could take 10 years to get to,
And I
you
think that
know.
would be an optimistic
Sure.
timeline.
Do you see scaling that? Like if there's other jujitsu gyms that wanted to take a framework that you're working off of or building, like do you see that happening or no?
So anything is possible. So usually what happens at the end of the day, because everything is a business, right? Like this is
Mm.
completely non, like everybody involved is donating time.
Sure.
Most jujitsu gyms aren't super profitable, so most owners don't have a ton of time to
Sure.
essentially donate to doing this kind of stuff. I would
Mhm.
love to see one of these in every like semi-major city, major city, but you just don't know. You don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a lot to ask for sure, but the cause is really cool too.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a few gyms there that could get inspired for that. How did the idea come about? What sparked that?
So I was talking a little bit previously, and we'll probably talk about a little bit later too in the podcast about how we're working with the SPD to help train officers better. So
Mhm.
over the last few years, I have not personally liked where our country is going as a whole, right? I think we're becoming very divisive, and that is not helping anybody. So one of the ways you have to look at is how can you personally help something? And for me, it's easier for me to help law enforcement and help
Mhm.
them bridge gaps in the community than it would be other things that other people have better connections with, right? So it was basically sitting down, brainstorming with some of the guys at the gym, like what are some ways that we can help better the community directly through us? Like where can we have our finger on the pulse? And this was one of the ones that came up. One of the guys really wanted to help using jujitsu to help underprivileged kids. And I was like, hey, why don't we bring in the police? Then we can change optics and we can get a lot more stuff going with that. And that's kind of how it was born.
Oh, that's cool. How many police would you say on average are at your gym?
Whew. We have quite a few. I would say we might have maybe 80 to 90 officers now at the gym through different agencies. It's awesome. Awesome. Like on an average day, we probably have around 40 to 50 officers that come through the gym. So
Hmm.
it's really been amazing watching all the officers start to embrace training jujitsu. And I would bet all the gyms now in the area have seen a pretty good uptick now with people training jujitsu that are officers.
What do you think sparked that uptick in interest?
It was 100% the study. Because the fact that we can work directly with the academy, we got pretty good media coverage initially when we did that. Like, I really think once you get enough coming in, then it's word of mouth, right? Like, I would say probably 70% right now of our members are strictly referrals and word of mouth. So once you start the word going, that starts to spread.
Yeah, that's good to see that we have safer streets and more control, less stories on Fox News and
Right.
CNN.
Right. Well, and it's changing the optics on that, right? Like when we started to deep dive into things, it was basically people making a mountain out of something that wasn't as big of an issue that it was just blown way out of proportion, right? So if we
Mm.
can even turn the way that media starts framing things, that would help tremendously with law enforcement.
Mhm. I know that these agencies are stretched, a lot of them for funds, but I think that part of the job requirement is like a free membership or 50% off to a
100%.
local wrestling club or
Yep.
jujitsu or something. I just think that should be like, because they're not making a lot of money anyways,
Right.
right? Like, it's not like they're getting super rich being a police officer.
Right.
So, it should just be like you get health insurance, you get, agency is partnered with a few gyms and, we want you to go and we recommend a minimum of X number of check-ins per year.
Yep.
And, I don't know. Yeah, they would create healthier officers, right, from a fitness capacity. And then obviously, like we talked about before, just, control and
Yep.
energy and all of that. Yeah. So let's dive into this farther. The pilot project, defensive tactics and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu training for law enforcement. what did you see with this study and the pilot project that you're rolling with now?
So it's been pretty amazing so far. So we're on our third academy right now. We will so it the way that this is set up is there's 6 months during the academy. We get them 2 times a week, and we run them through a very specific curriculum. And then after they're done with the academy, they go on what's called FTO. And then depending on the department, FTO can range from like 6 months to a year. Just depends on the department. So when they are done with FTO, we have a researcher that goes and follows them for the next 6 years, comparing their outcomes versus other non-trained officer outcomes. Okay. So Marietta, Georgia, they did this study. We basically are piggybacking off their study. Their study wasn't published though. It was an internal study, which is awesome. It opened the doors for us, but there's a lot of holes when the department who's putting it on is also the one that's like, hey, see, it works great, right?
Yeah. It's a lot like the pharmaceutical studies that, when you read the bottom of this study, it's like sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to basically have it so we can avoid that kind of stuff. And once we can show that we've put around 2,000 officers through this program, we will have definitive proof. And like you were mentioning earlier, the goal is where if you are a police officer, it's just part of the job to train jiu-jitsu. Like there's no way around it. And as long as we can show, because at the end of the day, the only thing that people really care about is cost, right? If we can show the cost benefit of this, then it's a no-brainer for departments to do. So we haven't started with the long-term data yet because we're about 1.5 years in and we don't have a good enough sample size yet for the long-term portion. But we've been able to show just by them doing this program through the academy. So one of the things everybody was worried about was injury. Oh, they're going to get injured doing this kind of stuff for this prolonged period of time. We've actually been able to demonstrate that the exact opposite is happening. So in my opinion, when they get crashed into their 2-week DT training in the academy, these are a bunch of people who have never done anything like that athletically. And they just get hammered for 6 to 8 hours a day, having no idea how to fall properly or anything. Now they get taught that, but if you're cramming that in 2 weeks, that's how injury happens. It's just too much, too fast, right? So I think because we've been doing this they usually are with us for about 3 to 4 months before they hit DT. They now know how to fall. They know how to do actually more than if they were in DT anyways. So we've seen a reduction of injury across the board. And it's so cheap to train officers compared to so basically if we prevent one injury in the academy, it pays for the entire 6 months for everybody in the academy.
Yeah.
So cost benefit right there already shows that, hey, we're good to go on this and everybody should at least be doing this for 6 months during the academy.
Yeah. And you and I know 2 weeks, right? Like you said, they're normally getting exactly. And who knows even who the instructors are, right? Like it could be like an old wrestling, guy from 17 years ago,
right?
Teaching defensive tactics in 2 weeks, and everyone leaves thinking that they're a UFC fighter,
That's the problem, right? Is everything is about checking a box, and that's what this has become for law enforcement. Oh, they did their 2 weeks. Now, as long as we hit every single move that they have in their curriculum, we're good to go. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and the other thing, again, you and I know the difference is like training versus live rounds, right? So you have, the skill component and all of that and the knowledge, but then you have live rounds and then you have the next level higher, which is like street fight, right? And they're all three very, very different escalating forces. So you may be the A student in the technique class, right? And, but then you get to a live round where there's some body tension, timing, and speed and endurance. The wheels fall off, let alone someone with a knife, and you chase them for 2 minutes, and it goes on and on.
100%.
So that's why I think this needs to be continual all the time. I don't like government funding things only because I'm a libertarian, but right. But if your study and other studies are showing how effective this is, maybe there should be some kind of, allotment for this for agencies. We know they waste enough money. We should put it into things that actually work. So
100%.
yeah, that's really cool. So is this an ongoing thing now? You're going to be working with academies like continually?
Yep. So we've got SPD for a 5-year contract. SU's, so they have what's called peace officers for SU University, but they are actually bringing their newest academy in. I think next month is when they officially start. And we are going around trying to bring other departments who run academies on board. We had the DeWitt PD, they sent some of their front-facing officers. We just run, so just because of how departments work and liability works, it's very difficult to do front-facing officers versus people going through the academy. Because if a front-facing officer gets hurt or fakes an injury, then the department is responsible forever, as opposed to they're just responsible for them during the academy.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fine line, because there is injuries, and so, here we are saying we think that officers should train year round, 2-3 times a week, this and that. But, there is that fine line. I don't know what that is, and the last thing, these, let's say a department has 60 officers, and 2 or 3 are tweaked sort of continually, and it's rotating people, and then they're getting care, chiropractic, PT, maybe a surgery. This can spiral really quick on that budget line, Yeah, but either way, we know it's part of the job and it's needed at some level for sure. What do you see with at these academies? You have this group of people that are rookies for the most part in hand-to-hand, combat or grappling. What do you see, like, as far as lack of knowledge / mistakes / things that need to be improved upon? What do you see in the first week or so?
So I'll say this has been interesting. So the academy stuff is new to me, right? But we have some of the trainers that come in that have been doing this for like 15 or 20 years, training previous academies, right? And something that I was surprised with, and that they've noticed through the years, is that the people that are coming in to be officers, almost none of them have ever been in a fight in their life, which is very different than what it used to be. Usually you'd have somebody who at least been in like a high school scrap or something like that. So this also, you have to figure, changes how it works out in the street, right? Because typically if you're dealing with a career criminal, they've been fighting for their whole life. There's a lot of stuff that was probably not great at home. They're different, right? Yeah. As opposed to these officers that we're getting in the academy that have never basically been in trouble ever. They have no idea how to throw a punch, right? I mean, some of them, they have to literally show them how to make a fist. Like, it's just so very green, very, very green. So a lot of like fundamental movements are just not there. So from weeks, like, usually for the first like 6 weeks is a lot of just learning, teaching them how to move correctly. And then after that, it's where
and that's not necessarily their fault, but it is a society and a culture that's sort of sad, right? Because you and I grew up building tree forts, fighting friends, wrestling, playing football, and then you're getting in a fist fight after because you lost. And it's like, it goes on. I fought with my friends constantly. And it was like, we're still friends, and it's just this, and that's just part of the whole childhood thing, right? And now we have like, and again, not to the fault of these specific individuals, but we have like a snowflake culture. And, we don't want Johnny or Susie to get hurt or their feelings, and we want safe spaces. And obviously that's not working out well. But, wow, so you're spending that much time just getting them oriented around movement and the super basics.
Yes. So we had to do not a massive change, but a fairly decent change from the first academy to the second academy, because that was something that we weren't ready for. Because they have to come in a certain level of shape, but you don't expect to be like, hey, you can't leave your leg there, because if you get pushed backwards, it's going to blow out. Like, what are you doing? So yeah, it's been changed up, which has been great. But yeah, those are the kind of things that you don't expect to see, or at least I wasn't expecting to see with this generation of officer coming in.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I read a study the other day that the handshake pressure, the pounds per grip strength, has gone down in males 30% over the last like 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
But females has gotten stronger.
All right.
So it's nearly equivalent at this point.
My goodness. Yeah.
Right. So kudos to females,
Yes.
and for you guys listening, come on. And then the other thing I was reading was 77% of people of ages 18 to 27, I think, no longer qualify for military service because of just physical and mental. And then once let's say you are part of that 23%, that's not saying you're going to pass the physical.
Right.
That's just saying that you can try out for the team.
Yes. Yeah. And due to culture, most people don't want to do those things anymore. Like, I can't imagine, at least the military isn't painted quite in the same light as law enforcement, but I know we have a recruiter at the gym that says we are starting to get almost to the point where we might need a draft. The numbers are getting so low.
I saw that.
So it's terrifying.
Well, we missed for 2022, I think, don't quote me on the exact number, but we missed our recruiting number with the military by like 50,000 people. Yeah, you saw that?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's super scary. Now, let's give everyone credit here, instead of, necessarily just putting them down with a snowflake culture. Like they want to be police officers.
Yeah.
And they're signing up for a wicked hard job.
Yep.
With little to no reward. And, so for anyone putting their hand in that arena, I applaud you.
Yes,
for
100%.
Sure.
I mean, we don't have enough applying anyway. So the ones that we do, like getting into this job now with how bad the optics are, like they're getting into this because they want to make a difference, which is awesome.
And, irregardless of where they're starting, again, I'm just backtracking here, but like, they're going to improve.
Yes.
Like that's why they have you. And so like, who cares if they don't know how to make a fist? Like teach them.
Right.
Right. It's the same thing we have at our gym. We work with 80% beginners, and it's not like they come in and we're like, you can't do a chin up. Could you imagine how my sales would go with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it wouldn't go so well. So we help people, and you help people. So in an ideal world, Ben, and again, let's not say perfect, but ideal, how many days a week and how many hours or minutes or time should an officer be training in some kind of tactical piece?
So I don't honestly think it needs to be anything crazy. I really do think 2 to 3 days or 2 to 3 hours a week is probably more than enough, right? Because it is very physically demanding. And when people get tired, that's when injury happens. And they can have a very physically intensive job depending on where they're working, right? So I think that 2 to 3 hour mark still allows for skill acquisition, but it's not putting you in that spot where you're training maybe like 5 or 6 hours when injury really can start to accumulate throughout the week.
That's where I am. I train in an ideal week 3 90-minute sessions with Len. But my realistic week with the kid and business and everything is 2.
Yep.
And so I'm getting in maybe 10 rounds a week at 5 to 6 minutes, and I'm getting in 90 minutes or so of technique work between the 2 days, and still improving. I have enough time to recover. And so I agree with you. I think that's a sweet spot, 2 to 3 hours, for sure. With exercise, not just for officers, but people in general, what have you seen in the fitness world that is the most beneficial to improving grappling? If any.
Yeah,
it could be nothing. It's because you've got Bryce Mitchell in the UFC, like chopping wood and like chasing chickens, and he hits hay bales. And then you've got like the UFC Performance Institutes, right, which is all the highest tech shit. So obviously we both know you can skin that cat many ways. But like from a 101 perspective, what do you think is beneficial?
So it's funny that you asked that. So I actually have an exercise physiology background from way back in the day. So that's what I used to do. And I used to think like more sports specificity kind of training was really, really good. But then when we come back to like how many hours realistically in the week are you able to dedicate to this stuff? I don't know if I don't know if coach is going to want me to throw him under the bus, but Coach Ettinger, who's a strength coach for the SU football team, back before I really destroyed my hip, I was working with him, and it was literally we do 2 hours a week, so 2 sessions, and it was your basics, deadlift, squat, and bench press, and then with some other ancillary things. But I think just doing your big major movements, I think that honestly helps out most with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I agree. Done it 13 years full time, and structural, compound, functional movements, barbell, dumbbell, joint stability, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't have a different answer than that. The movement, if you get into like specifics, the 2 movements that I like that are, obviously done many times in the grappling world, like hip bridge, right? Bridging, glute strength, hamstrings. I think that's important. And then the Turkish get up, I think is a really cool movement. Now, it's funny, only the first half of the Turkish get up. I don't know if the second half correlates like with that overhead lunge. But that ability to have that unilateral torso rotation to the elbow, then bump up to the hand, almost like you're going to do like a sit out. That's I think that's pretty damn functional. And I'm amazed here how weak a lot of people are with that movement.
Yeah. So one of the basic things that we always talk about, especially starting off, let's say with the law enforcement, is the idea of opposite limbs. So opposite hand, opposite shoulder, opposite foot, opposite shoulder, opposite foot, opposite hand, like getting used to the idea of getting to that Turkish get up position or technical stand up position all the time. And that fundamental idea of using like the diagonal across your body is pretty much everything in jiu-jitsu. So once you start to really get good at that, and especially get strong in those positions, that can pay dividends in your ability to grapple.
Yeah, because very, very few things are done bilateral with perfect, like almost like you think of like a bench press, like everything's perfect. Very little in grappling is that the case. I remember when I first started in the grappling world, how I was blown away at how strong people were that didn't look strong and were not big. I'm talking like 140 pounds, right? And they just totally destroy you. Not even, I'm saying not even skill. I'm just saying they just manhandle you like a rag doll. But again, one's like this organic, natural farm strength. And then the other is what I call gym strength. And I think you need both for longevity, for sure, because I know plenty of farm strength people whose bodies suck and they're just wrecked. And then on the other side, we know plenty of like gym bros with like the big biceps and chest that would be pretty much useless in a physical alteration, you know? But yeah, it's you get your hands on someone that knows what they're doing. Don't judge them by what they look like.
Well, that's honestly, it's one of the nice things now about being a little bit older. So like in the academy, that's one of the things we talk about is like you can no longer judge how difficult somebody's going to be to arrest based on what they look like. And so I make sure to go with all of them. And I'm like, did you think this fat, balding dad, it was going to beat the living shit out of you? And all of them are like, no. I was like, this is why you can't go out there assuming you know what to expect. Like, because you just don't know.
Sure. 100%. I saw this video on YouTube the other day. It was this, he was a white belt, but he was probably like 340. He looked like something from like Game of Thrones. And I don't know if he was white or blue or what he was, but he was like probably 140 pounds. And he runs into this dude for like a takedown, which I don't know why you would ever try a shooting double leg on this guy. But the guy literally didn't even react. He just grabbed him with a standing guillotine.
Lifts him off the ground.
Yes. And he just yoked this kid up, but he was like really gentle with him. Like he felt bad for him. and he's sort of like just applying it a little bit. The kid's legs are like kicking. And the guy's like looking at the ref like, should I like dump him or like, and the kid finally tapped, but it was I don't think the guy moved at all.
No.
Like that's not the kid that shot in for that was like obviously not experienced enough to know that a human being built like that, irregardless of his skill, can still kill you if he wants to. Right?
Yes, 100%.
That's what we would call like situational awareness. I would be running the other way.
The first form of self-defense.
Yes, correct. Oh, that's funny. So, 10-year goal for your business. I'm an entrepreneur also. I like setting goals. I set a little bit less goals now since COVID, just because I know how volatile the world can be, how quickly that can change. But 10 years, like rough vision, you're only 37, so that puts you at 47. And I'm assuming you want to build a business and not a job. What's your goals?
So, you know what's funny about this, Josh? So I've been open, it'll be 2 years, end of August. And I had a 10-year business plan written out, talking about like, are we going to be taking market shares or creating market shares, and things of that nature. We are already at our 10-year goal. We will break 400 members this week, which is ridiculous. So I guess like reevaluating where we would like to go, I would like to probably open up in the next like 3 or 4 years. So here's what's weird about jiu-jitsu. It's very difficult to train instructors. It takes a very long time unlike some other types of fields. So probably over the next 3 or 4 years, I would like to get people that would be relatively good at teaching and then open up some other locations. We already have a few affiliates, and just keep building the affiliate brand. But honestly, Josh, like I'm happy right where we are. This has been such a whirlwind for me. It's been completely unexpected. So,
well, there's a sweet spot, because I talk with a lot of business owners, and there's a sweet spot, right? Because I think entrepreneurs are wired to the degree that we think more, growth, better. And I can agree with that at some extent in varying degrees, but I don't know. I think you're going to find the sweet spot. Maybe it is one location, 400 members. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5. I don't know. There are people that own hundreds of locations with franchises and they just work 80 hours a week, Yeah, that's cool, man. 2 years, 400 members. That is sick.
Josh, it's been unbelievable. Like I was figuring by year 3, we'd be pushing like 150. The community has been so overwhelmingly positive. Like everybody's trying to bring friends in now. And I personally think, and I didn't factor this in initially doing the business plan, I think jiu-jitsu is finally starting to overtake karate in the public's perception.
Yeah,
and
I
think we're hitting a good uptick now in general for jiu-jitsu. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, and I think the key from a business perspective to successful jiu-jitsu gyms versus just a gym is going to be client retention.
Yep.
And figuring out, I'm not going to say holistic, because jiu-jitsu isn't really holistic, but I think you need almost an approach to be like, how can we have members here 5 years, 10 years? How can we involve them in the community at varying degrees? Because or else I think the turnover will be a 1 to 2 year.
Yep.
And then people will get the basics and be confident and move on. And that's okay too. But to have long-term, it'll be interesting to see how that's done.
Yeah, 100%. And I think things like having like the Haven initiative, and we've started like our Haven quote unquote run team. I think having stuff where it gives people multiple options to stay involved, because jiu-jitsu, it is a more of an intimate sport than anything that you're ever going to do. And people become closer, I think, in jiu-jitsu than they would in other sports due to the fact that you have to have the trust and everything like that. So I think if you give them other reasons to stay so they don't hit that fatigue of the diminishing returns with strictly jiu-jitsu, I think that's ways to keep people in, keep them involved in the community that you create, and then just keep figuring out ways to branch out on those kind of things.
Yeah, I saw your run club on Facebook there. I think that's awesome. Like, yeah, this is funny. I took about 10 years off from running. I did a lot of CrossFit and I did a lot of, gymnastics work, but I hated running. And now my wife signed us up for a 10K in Charleston, South Carolina. So the last 2 months, I'm like, oh, shit. And I'll tell you what, the funny thing is aerobically, no concern at all. I can run all day long. It's
your
like
knees
the body.
and hips back. Yeah.
Well, you're not conditioned for running, right? And it is interesting, eye opener. But then I was on your Facebook and I saw that, and it's just a community building piece, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really all that is, and I think that's important.
And so that funny story about that one. So we have a pretty big ball busting culture at the gym, and I actually hate running. I usually bust on people running because I'm like, it's just so bad for your knees and everything like that. And I can't even come close to running anymore. But so one of the guys was trolling me online by making that Haven Run Club. I was like, you know what? You're going to be the head of it. I'm putting you in charge, and you're going to make this legitimate. We just got to ran with it, which has been great. So I always tell the guys, be careful how much you troll me because I might make you take something over.
Well, I saw some of the comments on there that were like, Ben, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you smoking or something? I don't know what it was, but they were like, what's going on here? And from a jiu-jitsu community, I can see that ball busting for sure.
Yeah.
But business side, idea side, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't plan on asking you this, but I'm curious with instructors, and this is a highly debated topic in the jiu-jitsu world. Like he's like, oh, he needs to be a black belt to teach, and he needs to be a brown belt, or he's a blue belt, and he can. What is your opinion on the requirements to be an instructor under an instructor? I'm not saying opening up your own school, but like a student at your school that's going to run fundamentals / 1 or 2 days, 1 or 2 sessions a week. What do you see there?
So it depends. So I'm going to give an example. One of my affiliates is in Geneva. He is either a 2 or 3 stripe blue belt right now. Now, normally, like blue belt is when you're considered like you can teach and own your own program, but normally I would say not blue belt, right? But he had taught Kung Fu for literally 15 years. And I think something most people don't realize, or at least understand starting out, is teaching and coaching is a completely, and I mean completely different skill set over knowing jiu-jitsu, right? Yep. So he had all the reps in on the teaching part. It was just the knowledge. His knowledge is good enough to teach where he's at, fundamentals to white belts, and obviously not advanced. But the teaching aspect, he's better than most people who are like brown or black belts just starting off teaching jiu-jitsu, right? So I like to get my guys starting at blue belt. I like to have them help new people coming in, so they get used to teaching the warm-ups and things like that. And then at purple belt is really when I start to like, hey, maybe you take this class 1 day a week so we can start working on your teaching chops. And not everybody wants to teach, but it's twofold. I do think it helps you understand jiu-jitsu better because you have to learn how to break it down to the lowest common denominator, right?
Yep.
And then for those that do want to teach, you have to have the practice. I was lucky enough to start teaching at purple belt, and I really think it helped the overall growth of my game and the ability to teach. Like I was saying, John, it's just they're two completely different animals.
Yeah. Everything you just said is what I see at the gym here, right? You could have the exercise science major and this and that, but he can't talk well. He can't present well. He can't detail things well, but he could like take a test and pass that and do well. But then you have the basement warrior, right? That's helped his friends and family through the years, and like he has a good personality, and he can teach.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing, I believe, in jiu-jitsu, just my opinion, is that you could have a blue or a purple that understands teaching
Yes.
and the ability to break complicated concepts down into simple ways. And a lot of people can resonate with them better,
Yep.
just because of how they see things, right? So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, purple belt, for sure, and maybe some blue doing some. So, and also, and you said this, but I don't think this gets enough attention. Is you learn way more teaching.
Yes.
And so obviously if you're teaching it wrong, then it needs to be corrected and caught.
Yep.
But like, I don't know, I just am thinking, like, if I had to teach a class today, like, yes, I could, depending on the material for sure, but I'm going to have to approach that much differently as opposed to, like, if me and you are going to hang out on a Saturday and do some drills, right?
Yep.
If I'm teaching someone that is newer or brand new, I've got to go back to really break things down. And I think that's a skill set too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And like I was saying before, I think that's something that people don't realize. And I think it's extremely prevalent in jiu-jitsu because, so who really does instructional? So this has been something to me that I've never quite been able to understand. So if you're going to buy an instructional, who do you really buy? You buy whoever's the biggest winning tournament name, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, if you were to think about this intelligently, who would you really want the instructional from? The athlete or the person who coached to make that athlete as good as they are? Like, now you're starting to see John Danaher at least kind of break that mold. But it is bizarre in jiu-jitsu where it's only the competitors. And now, yes, most of them have gotten to a point like Lachlan Giles and Craig Jones. Some of them can teach fairly well, but still a lot of them can't. And it's like, where are the coaches? Like, have the coaches putting out the material. So
yeah, totally agree. It's like the best athlete in the gym doesn't make the best coach.
Right.
So if you had to do it all over again, and you were going to talk to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give them?
I would be smarter about training through injury. That is literally the fact that I had to have hip surgery at 34 years old. I just pushed way too hard. So, being smarter about injury. And, like, starting jiu-jitsu way back in the day, like, jiu-jitsu was just MMA. And everybody was a knucklehead when it came to training, like, just all the time. So, yeah, I think the biggest word of advice I would have given myself is be smarter about training through injury. Flow roll a little bit more on those, or just take some time off. Like, I just think I was dumb back in the day when it came to that.
Yeah, well put, Ben. More people need to hear that. Cool, dude. So we're about an hour in. This has been so cool. We could chat a long time. I'm going to be following the progress with everything you're doing. I'm hoping it gets the word out to a lot of people. I know you're doing such great work with the kids and police and your community. We need more of this, right? The world is pretty jacked up with negativity.
Yep.
So I like to put somewhat of a positive spin on people that are doing really cool things. So thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
So how can listeners learn more about Haven Jiu Jitsu and the Haven Initiative?
Yeah, so the school's website is cnyjujitsu.com, and then havenjujitsu.com if they want to start to learn a little bit more about the initiative itself. I would always recommend, because everything's fairly small, like, reach out to me and talk to me if it's something you're interested in. My email's right on the website, ben@cnyjujitsu.com. Hit me up, and I'm always willing to give information on all these things.
Awesome. We will see you on the other side, buddy.
Thank you, Josh.